I work with drug addicts in Vancouver now at a place called the Portland Hotel. It's not a hotel, but it's a domicile. And living in the place are people who have multiple problems. They have serious drug addictions. Many of them have HIV. They all have hepatitis C. And many of them have mental illness as well. So I look after their HIV needs. I give them methadone for their heroin addiction. Their infections that they get frequently because they keep injecting themselves with needles. Their immune system are shot. They're malnourished. So that, you know, there's all kinds of medical and of course, always ongoing emotional problems. And that's what my present work is, and that's what I'd like to write about, is just what my experience working with these people is, but also about what I learned about addiction. And a patient of mine I was talking to recently, I asked her, she was complaining about how she can't beat the cocaine habit. And I said to her, well, look, Barb, consider that maybe it's doing something for you. That maybe it's actually providing something in your life that you need. What would that be? She says, when I do cocaine, I don't feel so alone. Now, so many people in the last day and a half that I've been here have talked about the need for connection, the need for human connection. And Ken Finkelman quoted William Burroughs as saying that love is the great painkiller. Well, of course, heroin is also a painkiller. And it's not just a physical painkiller, it's also an emotional painkiller. I once asked a sex trade worker with HIV, I said, what did you feel, I asked her, when you first injected yourself with heroin? And she said, it felt like a warm, soft hug. And there, in a nutshell, is the science of addiction. Because again, it turns out what? Guess what? Endorphins are the body's own human morphine-like opiate substances. If we didn't have endorphins, which are our own morphine-like substances, morphine and heroin wouldn't work in our bodies. But we have receptors for endorphins, and morphine looks sufficiently, and heroin looks sufficiently like endorphins, that the receptors are fooled. So therefore they work. It turns out that when mother and infant, or parent and infant, are looking into each other's eyes with that warm, loving gaze from which the whole world is excluded, just the two of them, connected, one unit, endorphins are released in the infant's brain. And then the circuitry of endorphins develops. And Alexander Tsiaris yesterday mentioned dopamine, another chemical messenger in the brain, a neurotransmitter. Dopamine is also released, and the circuits also develop. These people that I see in the Vancouver downtown east side all had childhoods in which they didn't get enough dopamine and endorphins. Just listen, if you listen to their stories, you get it over and over and over again. But what interests me in this book as well is not just the experience of the hardcore drug addict, but also the rest of us, because you know what, I'm an addict myself. I mean, yesterday when Paul Wells was talking about Beethoven's Opus number 132, I have 5 versions of that thing at home. And I used to have a very serious compact disc addiction. And when I say compact disc addiction, I don't mean just that I'm passionately in love with classical music, but I am. But the compulsion and the impulse, there would be days in which I would leave my work, I'd leave a woman in labor to go and buy a piece of classical music. And I could have made it back on time, but then I started shopping for other stuff, you know? So it's not the classical music that's addictive, it's my own relationship that's addictive. And you know what? We live in an addictive society. To one degree or another, we're all like that. And my thesis is that the reason I look upon Barb as a junkie, and we all ostracize the drug addict because we recognize the kind of emptiness that many of us try and cover up inside by pursuing stuff that's going to fix us from the outside. And I can do that by being a workaholic doctor. That gives me lots of adrenaline. And it's Hans Selye, a great Canadian researcher, said that you can become addicted to your own stress hormones. Adrenaline is very addictive. And so we can get chemical addictions even if you don't do any drugs. And it all comes down to a kind of emptiness, the kind of deficiency that we have. And then I can tell you, like for years, I was fuming about not being invited to ideaCity. You know? I would say, what the heck? I mean, these people that are being invited, you know, how do they compare to what I have to say, you know? Now, it's one thing to enjoy coming here and as an activity. It's quite another to feel a sense of deficiency. when you're not included in something. That sense of deficiency can never be fed by being invited. Because then I'm sitting, because the ego, which is basically a deficient machine to try and get stuff from the outside, which we're not giving to ourselves, the ego then says, some people were invited twice. You know. In other words, anything that's ego-fed and anything that comes from a sense of deficiency is addictive. And that's why we live in an addictive culture. And that, I think, why we ostracize the drug addict. And that's what creates so many problems for them in the downtown east side. And I think I'm running out of time, so I thank you very much. Oh, yeah, sorry, one more thing. Can I say one more thing? Thank you. I was actually going to say something about teddy bears, because when Annette Kuntz yesterday showed the slide of the young woman, the young girl, you know, with the breasts and the menstruation, and she's holding the teddy bear. And I hate to tell you, Moses, but when I came into the room and I saw these things sitting there, I said, oh, great, teddy bears. And I thought, well, gee, teddy bears don't have tails like that, you know. And, but it reminded me of my drug-addicted patients. When you visit them in their rooms, these women, these hard-bitten women, who provide oral sex for strangers for $5 a shot, and who have been beaten in their lives, and just every kind of degradation that they've subjected themselves to or have experienced from others. When you go to their rooms, and they're full of cockroaches, and bed bugs, and junk, and dirt, they all have teddy bears. And one woman I know has a whole collection of them. She's got about 100 of them in her room. They're all looking for love. And yeah, love is the best painkiller, but it's that lack of love and that lack of self-love then that leads all of us to seek from the outside what we can never get from the outside. So thanks again.